Let's dive into our top story. This is the greatest example. I mean, we are watching the greatest example of propaganda, I think, in world history. You know, I'm a student of history, and going back, I'm thinking, can I think of a better example, a bolder example, a more brash example of propaganda in any historical event? And I can't think of it. And I think overwhelmingly, there will be a media analysis done of this war at some point by somebody, and we will know that this by far eclipses every other war, every other man event that includes propaganda in world history. And the greatest actor on that stage is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky made good on his promise to demand more United States aid during his trip to Washington yesterday. We picked him up in an Air Force private jet from Europe in style, fully catered. We took care of it, right out of our budget. Upon arrival, we sent a limousine to the airport to take this amazing actor to meet with the President of the United States, and then he did not disappoint. Upon his arrival, he received a standing ovation like he was going to the Academy Awards for his amazing acting skills that helped destabilize Europe, destroy Europe's energy system, drive the American dollar and economy off a cliff. Here was that moment and that standing ovation. Here he comes. There he is. It's just, it's almost like watching a State of the Union address. Like we're waiting for the president to come down the aisle for the State of the Union. Let's everyone clap. Oh, everyone wants to touch him too. Yes. Everyone wants to touch him. And who's that? Everyone wants to touch him and get their hands on him. I want to see the man in the green sweatshirt. It really is an amazing moment. I mean, and he did not disappoint, because then he turned an amazing performance where he admitted that Ukraine has beat Russia. Listen.
And it gives me good reason to share with you our first joint victory. We defeated Russia in the battle for minds of the world.
No, I think that line, it really struck me, because I'm like, you're admitting that it's a war of propaganda.
Yes, exactly.
If it's just that we're trying to get people on our side, that's not a win. That's just a rallier, right? Like I talk to my kids about this a lot. When you're in a conflict and you need to tell everybody to get people on your side, that doesn't mean you're right. It just means you're better at gathering people on your side.
It reminded me of Jeb Bush. Remember when Jeb Bush was running for president and he was at that one event, that town hall event or whatever, and he was like, so I'm going to do this. And everyone no, it was all crickets. And he goes, you can applaud that. Go ahead and clap for that. And people are like, oh, okay. We're supposed to clap for that moment?
The clapping did seem very synchronized, as if it was supposed to be punctuated at certain points. The part we're going to get to when we tell you about how, they want death. Congress is applauding more death. That was a standing ovation. This, though, I thought, that's not it. I feel like in this day and age, we should be proud when we see through propaganda. So to say we've been able to market this war better than Russia is essentially what he just said. And I was like, I can't believe he said it, but at least thanks for being honest.
Yeah, we won the minds. We beat Russia in the mind game. Like, we didn't actually beat Russia. We're being destroyed by Russia, but we beat Russia in the mind game. But actually,
in the popularity contest.
So this is the part that, I mean, it totally pissed me off. Like, it really pissed me off. I about threw my Paul Pelosi hammer at my computer this afternoon when I saw that, because what he just said is a bald-faced lie. Anyone with more than 3 brain cells knows that. A new study recently found that most of the world believes it's Ukraine and NATO's fault for this war. Most of the world. Perhaps in the United States, you have a lot of ignorant people that watch CNN who believe that Russia is to blame for what happened. Again, the propaganda war. So it's working. It's worked in parts of Europe, but most of the rest of the world absolutely knows what actually unfolded here. So how did we get here in the first place? Just a little context. The CIA driven effort to build an insurgency in Ukraine began as far back as 2014 and 2015, training neo-Nazi groups as a militia against the Russian people, the Russian population. And it also had broad domestic implications for the United States at the time. course, we were able then, because of this puppet regime that we put in place, we were able to put in 46 different bioweapons labs in Ukraine. We were able to buy up large swaths of land, put in all sorts of manufacturing. George Soros funded all sorts. I mean, the list is endless how this helped the United States with our puppet regime in Ukraine. So, but viewers of Redacted know all of this. They know all too well that in 2014 and 2015, NATO and the United States, led by the CIA, installed a puppet government in Ukraine. They then trained neo-Nazi groups as a militia to carry out attacks in eastern Ukraine. They then spent 8 years carrying out a genocide against the people of eastern Ukraine. These are not just ethnic Russians. That's a misnomer. These are also Ukrainians who wanted to live a peaceful life in their home, on their farmland, in their towns, in the Donbass.
And the people in Crimea as well, who felt that they were Russians
right.
until the reestablishment of the Ukrainian government came and stamped their passports and changed their passports when they didn't really want that.
No, they didn't. That's
and
a good
so
point.
for feeling that way,
right.
that they were and wanted to continue to be Russians, they were tortured.
And so you Zelensky, at the direction of NATO, NATO leaders destroyed their way of life, without a doubt. Destroyed their way of life. And if you want to spend 5 minutes researching it, you can. You'll have to dig for it on Google because it's suppressed, but it's there. You can read all about the genocide if you want to, or you can continue to be like a CNN ignorant crowd, but not this audience.
It is fastly disappearing from you from your Google searches, though. Those are the types of things that now I have kept PDFs and put them in certain places.
Yeah, you can't find it.
In duplicate places because you don't know what storage, type things that I'm using. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that the West wants you to forget.
Oh, I have a whole archive. That's the thing. Anytime I come across something I need to save it because I know it'll be disappeared. Like that's what happens with this stuff. You want to find this information? Gone. We have a whole archive now that we have to keep for this show because it gets suppressed and blocked. So anyway, you, sir, Mr. Zelensky, were responsible for destroying the people's lives in this eastern part of Ukraine. You, sir, are a war criminal standing inside of the United States Congress.
Yes, but our last few presidents have all been war criminals
right,
too. So that's the spot where they stand. That's the spot.
They're in good company. Right? We have Obama as a war criminal. Bush is a war criminal. We have these guys. You have Zelensky as a war criminal standing in the halls of the United States Congress asking American people for more money to carry out a war against innocent people.
Actually, Trump did not wage new wars. So
no, he's the only one to not start a new war.
Yeah, as whatever you think of him, when I think of it, I was like, well, no, Trump is not like Obama. He did not go off and kill more people.
Yeah, I mean, there were plenty of things that, we can talk about drone strikes.
Let's not get in there.
Anyway, we don't need to get down that rabbit hole. But here's a war criminal standing inside of the United States halls of Congress and demanding more money. This speech was aimed purely, directly at ignorant people, the fools that would applaud this kind of bullshit. That's what this speech was for. And yesterday we heard from Moscow. We heard from Russia. Once again, that Russia is ready for peace talks. I think they've said this now every day for the past 3 weeks. We are open for peace talks. We're ready to sit down.
Way more than that. For months. We've reported on it at least once a month.
Yeah, this was part of their press conference yesterday. So, okay, will we hear about peace at all in this speech?
Oh, yes.
Peace talks? Let's listen and find out if we do. Let's listen. Here is Zelensky talking about, take a listen.
Are similar to the other tyranny, which is in the battle of the Bulge. Through everything it had against the free world, just like the brave American soldiers which held their lines and fought back Hitler's forces during the Christmas of 1944. Brave Ukrainian soldiers are doing the same to Putin's forces this Christmas.
So you're going to bring up a battle of the Bulge.
Ukraine holds its lines and will never surrender.
So here you go. Up until this point, they haven't been out of their seats, but never surrender? Yes. You have to. This means we want your people to go to the death against Russia. That's what they're applauding for. Never surrender. No, that's the opposite of peace.
So no peace talks then. So imagine that when you want more Ukrainians, that's what you want. You want more Ukrainians to die needlessly. That's what's going to happen. Because if the estimates are that there are somehow 200,000 forces left, which I think that's even being incredibly generous. And if anything, they're young children, like they're not even of fighting age, and literally being thrown to slaughter right now.
But don't worry, because he says they are very skilled. In this next clip we're going to show you, he says, we don't ask American soldiers to fight alongside us. You send us the gear, we will operate it yourself, as if it's like a blender. Like, I don't exactly know how to use this, but I'll figure it out because it's pretty self-explanatory.
Well, we had Colonel McGregor on the show recently, and Scott Ritter just recently talking about these weapon systems, particularly the Patriot missiles. You need a whole, like, you train for a long time to use these things. You do not just get thrown into this for a week.
No, he says they can handle it, so send it over. Listen to this.
I believe there should be no taboos between us in our alliance. Ukraine never asked the American soldiers to fight on our land instead of us. I assure you that Ukrainian soldiers can perfectly operate American tanks and planes themselves.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You know what? I want to play that Dumb and Dumber clip. Like, don't worry about it, Harry. I got it taken care of. With like a little zoom. Like, you can't figure. This is not a DIY. You can't figure that out.
Financial assistance is also critically important, and I would like to thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for both financial packages you have already provided us with and the ones you may be willing to decide on. Your money is not charity. It's an investment in the global security and democracy that we handle in the most responsible way.
Oh, okay. So that's your peace talks. It's about security.
Oh, no, he brings up peace in a very different way. What he's saying here is that this is an investment in democracy, meaning you are preventing one type of world order from taking hold.
And Ukraine is, of course, the epitome of democracy, right? So what you're doing when you look at Ukraine, not a corrupt government at all, really one of like the shining examples of democracy, where if you have people that speak out against tyranny, state-run media being taken over by the Zelensky government, like they'll duct tape you to telephone poles in the freezing cold, like that is democracy in action, and so we should all support that.
Philip found a story recently. Philip, where was that reporter from? She was from the Netherlands, who was ousted from Ukraine.
Yeah. She was in Ukraine, covering. Yeah.
She had a press pass, and she was ousted from Ukraine because she was being too neutral. So that's what democracy is?
Yeah, it's democracy in action.
I think she was Danish. I think she might have been Danish. But yeah, she was an award-winning journalist. And what they had problems with was that her reporting was too neutral. So they pulled her press pass, the SBU did, because she was covering both sides. And literally what the SBU told her was, you can have your credentials back if you just do reporting that we tell you to. If you report our information that we give you, then you can come back and do your reporting.
Oh, like the United States Press Corps.
That's cool.
Just like, we featured last night Barbara Starr, the handing you stories like at CNN. So about peace, I guess this is the last clip we wanted to play here of him. He and Biden discussed peace talks.
He says he has some sort of 10-point plan, and he talks about it as peace. It has nothing to do with ending the conflict. The way he couches it, to me, sounds more like security, as in we'll have peace because my U.S. thugs are going to surround me with some money and weaponry. And that's what he calls peace. See if you interpret it a different way than I do.
Russia could stop its aggression, really, if it wanted to, but you can speed up our victory. I know it. And it will prove to any potential aggressor that no one can succeed in breaking national borders, no one committing atrocities and reigning over people against their will. It would be naive to wait for steps towards peace from Russia, which enjoys being a terrorist state. Russians are still poisoned by the Kremlin. The restoration of international legal order is our joint task. We need peace. Yes, Ukraine has already offered proposals, which I just discussed with President Biden, our peace formula, 10 points which should and must be implemented for our joint security, guaranteed.
Okay, so what I think that means has nothing to do with peace. He said we have a 10-point plan that we will implement with President Biden that has to do with security. That just means I'm going to, have some lackeys around me.
No, what this means is that Ukraine will become a permanent sort of garrison state for the United States and NATO. It will be think of it like an aircraft carrier. It'll be a United States launching pad, a NATO launching pad, and this country will collapse. So that's what's about to happen here. The security whatever remains of Ukraine after this winter offensive, it becomes like a garrison state. That's really what it's going to become.
Yeah.
So the security of what's left after you march your country to total death. So here's how mainstream media told us, though. It was amazing to read the headlines today from the media. Oh my God, it was like some of the headlines were things like Zelensky goes to Washington and warms the hearts of Washington.
Or recalls us to ourselves as humans, is how the Atlantic put it. Like we were out in the cold depths of Seoul, and the dark night of Seoul, and his speech recalled us to ourselves. Here's Lawrence O'Donnell saying that this is something that, man on the moon landing, you will remember where you were when it happened.
Well, this was one of those nights when history was made right there in your living room on television. This was the night you dragged the kids in front of the TV so they'd be able to say for the rest of their lives that they saw Volodymyr Zelensky's address to a joint session of Congress and to the people of the United States of America and to the world. There are people...
Like you drag your kids?
Yeah, and look at that lower third graphic on the screen. Zelensky addresses Congress nearly 81 years after Winston Churchill's joint address. Like, they're really going out of their way. What they could have said, 75 years after Aunt Mildred baked her first cake.
No, he does. He then goes on to make the point that there are some people alive who even listen to both.
Oh.
And that, as in people who were alive for the Queen's coronation and her funeral. What a way to experience history. And I will say, should I say this? My daughter was in the room while I was watching this. So I did have a child with me to experience this moment. And she thought I was listening to Despicable Me. She thought that he was Gru. So it didn't land the way that Lawrence O'Donnell, and she was like, "What are you doing? You're watching Despicable Me?" I was like, "No, that's President Zelensky."
No, I can't.
Don't even try. Don't even try. And I think he's not doing that character anymore because.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you gave that context, because when Clayton read off that headline, I was like, just 2,000 years after Alexander the Great, or just after,
right. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous. And he sat down with his producers ahead of time. He's like, that was one of the greatest, most moving speeches. And at the top of this show, that's what I was talking about. That speech was written, given, delivered for the ignorant masses, right? The people that fall in line with this propaganda, and for whom the sheep, the people they try to keep in line, for whom a show like Lawrence O'Donnell is, red meat for them. Like, this is something they'll watch every night.
Yeah.
They'll watch Rachel Maddow followed by Lawrence O'Donnell. So here's Tulsi Gabbard talking about this democracy in Ukraine that we're going out of our way to defend. Watch.
You have the Biden administration's whole foreign policy is essentially based on democracies and autocracies. We've got to divide the world between these two categories, and the U.S. is going to lead the charge for democracies to defeat the autocracies. And so they have said, hey, Ukraine is a thriving democracy, and Zelensky is this hero that is protecting this democracy, which is why Biden says we'll do everything within our power to support him. And, oh, by the way, we're going to send almost $100 billion of American taxpayer dollars to go and support this defense of democracy. But when you actually look at what Zelensky's democracy is, you see no freedom of the press. He has shut down any media that he does not control, his government does not control. He has gotten political opposition arrested, made sure that that's happened. As you mentioned, he shut down the biggest Ukraine church in the country. And I found this quote today. He has actually threatened to punish, quote, any Christian caught worshiping in unapproved ways.
Oh,
so this is the democracy that they are saying, well, we need all of your money, our money, taxpayer dollars to go and defend. This is their shining example of democracy.
And so we did have some breaking news just a short time ago. Kevin McCarthy, the incoming Speaker of the House for the Republicans, has said no on this omnibus spending bill, this $1.7 trillion. So does that mean then that we will actually have like a wrench thrown into the works against getting this money to Ukraine now, like this sort of blowback? I don't know. But
it does show an appetite to stop the flow, at least by leadership now, not just fringe Republicans, which, will bring into the conversation a reason why, which is what we are trying to do here. We're not anti-Zelensky. We're anti-dragging out this war. And we realize that there's propaganda behind dragging it out for a reason. But, this investment of time on behalf of President Zelensky, it did pay off, because just a few hours later, here's the announcement from POTUS. Today, I'm announcing the next tranche of security assistance to Ukraine, a $1.85 billion package that includes equipment and ammunition contracts. Contracts is an interesting word. It's not a gift. Right?
Right.
Okay. And a Patriot missile battery that we will train forces to operate as part of our efforts to strengthen Ukrainian air defense.
Great. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at Redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to Redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.